Yeah, so let's get started. Today we have a very, very interesting presentation with us here, provided by Matt of Rev Partners. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jan. I'm Jan. I'm the RevOps community manager here at HubSpot. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm wearing a t-shirt because it's the weather is very great here. And in the office, we don't have any AC, but it's luckily not, we're not sweating yet. That's probably for in a couple of weeks. So I'm really excited for this event here. It's called Growth-Driven CRM. And Matt will talk a bit more about how you can prevent CRM implementation failures by just a different approach to how you implement your CRM in general, instead of like using project-based implementations. You just treat it as a product that your teams will come to love. So we have Matt here. He is co-founder and I think head of content and growth. I'm not exactly sure what your title is, Matt. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but he's a thought leader. He's an expert on everything RevOps, and he's a great guy all around. And I'm happy to have him here. So yeah, Matt, take it away.
Appreciate the intro, Jan. Just for everyone, my name is Matt Bullion. My pronouns are he, him. I'm wearing a HubSpot developer t-shirt, which is dark gray. And I'm excited to be here. Okay, so we're gonna cover a lot. I think Jan has pinned me so that I'm big, and we're trying something new, and I'm about to go into so you can start seeing. So to confirm, I can see my screen. Okay, so today we're here to talk about growth-driven CRM. This is something I think about a lot. I'll go with my background and why it's so passionate about it, but hopefully we can leave here with some very actionable, concrete ways to do CRM implementations differently, whether you're a systems integrator or you're an end user or you're thinking about changing your CRMs. How can you do it better next time, or how can you do it better this time? That's what we'll be covering. We're going to go through. Before I go a little bit more about me and Rev Partners, so you know where we're coming from. Okay, that is, I went to United States Military Academy called West Point, then went to a master's in London School of Economics and in urban economics. I used to be in the military as a military intelligence officer, used to run head of revenue operations where I did a Salesforce stack for a large billion-dollar telecom company. Co-founded Rev Partners, spoken inbound, have lots of HubSpot certifications. I'm a HubSpot lover now, and we run the CRM and Sales Hub hug for HubSpot. For Rev Partners does more CRM implementations than any other elite partner. To put it in perspective, we do 2x, but to put it in perspective, we don't have a website designer on our staff. We only do Sales Hub and CRM implementations. And because of that, we've been able to scale really fast, and we have accreditation. So this is when we got accredited, this is actually the methodology we came to HubSpot with. We're like, hey, this is how we would like to implement CRMs for y'all. Okay, so when you think about that, this is the HubSpot flywheel just turned into a RevOps motion, and it's what we think about what we do. And so the thing we're talking about is RevOps as a service. And so my specific belief is that every company has RevOps. The question is how you're doing it. You're either doing it well or you're doing it poorly. And so how, like, every person's doing it. So what the growth-driven design is, or growth-driven CRM is about, how do you create RevOps and do it systematically and so that your CRM can be useful for your company. That's what this is about. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Let me get us into the BLUF so we do that. And I'm going to slow down so we spend some time here. So what are you going to leave with today? What are the big ideas we're talking about? Idea number one, waterfall project plans, delay and prevent CRM impacts. So that means rigid project plans that have finite start dates and end dates that delay and prevent CRM impact for companies when they think about them in such ways. And we'll go over why. Number two, adoption. Everything you do for companies as a CRM must be about adoption. It is the true north, and it is the only thing that matters. We'll talk about that as well. Number three, get to your MVP, which is a minimal viable product, and iterate. So when you think about growth-driven CRM, it's really taking DevOps and product operations and applying it to a CRM, meaning it is an organism constantly having new demands. And then how do you, when a new feature or a new request comes, how do you iterate? And then how do you build upon what you've built at the beginning in a way that can continuously progress and get better? And then number 4 is RevOps. It's that word. And I am a big believer that RevOps is not a methodology. RevOps is not a centralized thing in your organization. It is simply how well do you collect, synthesize, disseminate revenue data information. It is not an art, it is a science. And there has best practices that can be applied throughout the entire journey to help you do that. So just follow the yellow brick road. And if you do some very basics, you'll be able, a CRM will be more successful. And so these are the 4 that we're going to go over and talk about how we execute that in the growth-driven CRM. As we're going through this, please ask questions, lots of questions. And Jan, please interrupt me as we go through if there are questions, and I will be attempting to monitor them. Okay. So let us start. So CRMs, when we use the word CRMs, and we'll define, it means customer relationship management. And it's this trying to get lots of data into one place, sales, marketing, and customer service all live in it. And the promise of CRMs, what we're being told is that they can help us become more profitable and more efficient. And so here's some stats that tell us that. They are every dollar you spend on your CRM, you get $8.71 back. So the average return, this is an average return. Your sales teams can be more effective, right? You're more likely to be able to, you're more likely to have an effective sales organization if there's a system of record. You can be more efficient. You can be, and your sales teams are happier. And this is a dreamy picture of CRMs. And they help drive revenue. And yes, they do when they work. They absolutely do. This is a truth. But let's be, CRMs help drive revenue sometimes. Why do I mean sometimes? Because actually 50% of the time is more like it, because 50% of the time an implementation fails. And I will just define what failure means. The reality is there's an unrealized gain when we think about CRMs. And yes, it helps when they're done well, but it does not help when they're not adopted. And when I think about adoption, I mean, if 75% or less of the organization, the sales, marketing, and CS organization are not using the CRM that you have, and they're using something else, then that is a failure. And 50% of those, on average, CRM implementations are failures. This is a big issue, right? And especially for HubSpot, right? When it's a CRM and we're implementing it over and over again. And this is why. The top 5 reasons that CRMs fail, and then the growth-driven CRM will address these. Top 5 reasons. Reason number 1, and you've heard us say it from the very beginning: adoption, adoption, adoption. If there is not adoption, it fails. Heavy customization, and I really push against this, is when the common logic is, hey, let's define every process, let's draw it all out. And then once we draw the process, we can then select a tool and select what we're doing. And we put function before ease of use, function before adoption, and it creates a very fragile, meaning it's hard to move. Once it's in state, you now have to spend money and spend more money to get it even more customized, and it becomes fragile and doesn't move as quick as the business changes. Thus, you move to an Excel. It's a fragile colossus. Prioritization is, because of this point, I see questions, and I'll answer right after this slide. Because of this point, we have scope creep. And this is what, during a 6 to 9 month implementation, which is the average time of a CRM, during a 6 to 9 month implementation, is the business fundamentally changes. It shifts. A new product is done. We hiring a new sales rep. Something switches. And what we thought about 6 to 9 months ago is no longer true today. And there is now a new process and a new requirement, but it's not in scope. So now you have to reprioritize, but it's not in scope. So you have to get it done, and it just doesn't work well. And so you have to have the ability to do change management, eat it, reprioritize it to the top. Number 4, lack of support and training. So when you have a CRM like this, it must be constantly documented, every process that you have, because if someone new comes in and they don't understand the process, your adoption decreases and this whole thing goes. And the last one is a lack of integrations. So there are multiple sources of truth, and people are using different systems and they cannot get the reporting they need because they don't have the integrations with the tool they need. So most specifically, this usually is between finance, marketing, and sales. So sales has a CRM, marketing has a marketing automation platform, and then finance has an ERP. And so when you're thinking about these are the most common ones you got to think about. Okay, so these are the 5 most common reasons to fail. But these all, in my opinion, are direct results or directly caused by project-based CRM implementations, because they're not built for adoption. They're built to be complete. They're built to finish. They're built to let's get things customized so that we can and have a project plan, and we're built to finish and complete what's in the project plan. This is why products and product-led growth companies do not use waterfall CRM. Construction projects do, but not products or CRMs. The next factor is they don't have RevOps foundations. And so when we do a project-based, many times, and I'll show what this means, there's a data model that everything's built on, all the processes are built on. And many of these project-based CRM implementations are about, hey, let's put sales stages into your CRM, but they don't look at the actual fundamental of the go-to-market that has to be built on. And so this leads us to I call it the CRM reboot cycle, where you have 3 phases, and I'll show a schematic and a drawing of this in a second. Phase 1, we have implementation, and it takes 6 to 9 months. And then phase 2, which is about 1.5 to 2 years, is increasingly decreasing usage of said CRM. And it can help them for multiple reasons, which is happening in phase 3, right? You're like, hey, I now no longer can use this CRM. I need to change. And so many times, this is why people are getting off HubSpot, moving to Salesforce, because they started on HubSpot, but it wasn't done with these initial premises. So they think they must move to a more sophisticated system like Salesforce because their HubSpot's not meeting their needs. When you're supposed to answer the question 2 slides ago. Forgive me. I will do it this time, I promise. So they change CRMs because it's easier to just wipe what they have and start over, because now they can build it on the principles we talked about. They're migrating the processes they now built from Excel into the CRM. They're purchasing brand new tool stacks, and they have to integrate with new tools that their teams are using. And this is the phase, and it occurs in about 3-year cycles. And I'm going to answer some questions as we go. So we have it. And I'm going into comments to go. So how likely are you to customize a CRM through small coding when doing an implementation? Just in general, and you'll see this, is customizing for codes. There would have to be a very specific industry specific, vertical specific requirement, because the way we'll think about the growth-driven design is you have to create your MVP, and the MVP is almost always exactly the same. So unless there's just super hard must have, I think it's only about 15% of the time are we doing custom codes. It's more likely we're doing custom codes to integrate for a specific tech stack, not for a specific use case, or something deliberately as a point. So they'll be like, hey, we do a custom code to get something into NetSuite, for example, which is an ERP. So, okay. So if there are any other questions, please put them in the Q&A and I will do that. So will you be discussing the better method of project management versus planning today? Is it more agile? If so, what are practices that make it work better? This is essentially taking DevOps, which is agile methodology, and applying it to CRM implementations. And that's what we'll be going over today. And I strongly believe that agile is best. How do you define adoption of the CRM? How much usage should there be to satisfy the adoption criteria? 75%. And how is where, like, if it's any lower than that, and I try to actually get to 90% before I consider a CRM implementation complete. And then how do you define adoption? I define adoption as salespeople means all emails are logged, all meetings are logged, and all transaction and all like sales stages are logged. and they're forecasting and putting their sales in there. And marketing means all emails are logged, interactions on the websites are complete. That's how I define it when I think about adoption. Okay, so I'm going to continue as we think about the reboot cycle. So we just talked about this reboot cycle. Here's what it looks like. This is the CRM reboot cycle. We start with CRM number one. And you notice we now have a capacity of doing CRM things. If you wait about a year and a half, 2 years, we now have decreasing usage. We have net new requirements. We have a new service. We have new, even more salespeople. And we enter into a new implementation cycle. Once it's complete, we then go up and we now have a better CRM, but it's the same issues. We're now going to decreasingly have increasing adoption. We're going to have net new requirements that occur, and then you're continuously creating new CRMs over and over again. It's expensive, it's risky, and it is difficult. And here's what it creates. It creates a fragile CRM that must be handled with care. We're going to have to hire an admin to make sure all these very specific functions are done. They're going to constantly be dealing with issues to make sure things are broken. They're going to be netting together. They're going to have to create reports from their CRM so that they can create another report in an Excel file. Right. So it's like there's all the, because they are not proactively creating feature releases and training, we are responding to the needs that are occurring. And so we create a fragile CRM. And this is the cost of these. And I'm hammering into this because I'm going to let's paint this picture. I've seen this happen. I have actually created a fragile CRM before, and it was painful. And so many of this is me being from my own past experiences of doing it incorrectly. Cost number one is a CRM that does not have adoption will spawn rogue Excel spreadsheets. And there is no process in which to merge those Excel spreadsheets into the CRM. So every spreadsheet is a really quick, spreadsheets are a quick way to destroy CRMs. And you want to see them as opportunities to bring net new features inside the CRM that you are, that your CRM, your product, right? Your internal product where you're doing sales and marketing and CS. Number two, over time, adoption drops. It does not increase. Think about, you have new hires and lack of training. And every time you add someone new that was not there during the initial implementation, the CRM has just likely decreased in usage. Number three, data in the CRM is less and less accurate because you have less people using it. Thus, it becomes less accurate, thus less useful. Cost number four is new questions. A CRM fundamentally just is there to answer very specific revenue questions. Are we on track? Are we behind? What do we need to do based on your go-to-market, which we'll get into in a second. But new questions occur and they require different data inputs that wasn't captured in the original requirements. You know how we answer that question? Another spreadsheet. Now we create another Excel. Number five, because we're not answering all the questions, shadow IT costs emerge and departments start solving their own needs without the CRM. That creates another data integration requirement, which is cost number six. And now you have even more to integrate. And now if you remember what was one of the 5 reasons that CRMs fail, they don't have a data integration because now it's a requirement because I'm using another tool because the CRM didn't meet my requirements and I don't want to move now. Cost number 7, it all culminates with this desire to have a source of truth and thus a new CRM implementation. You start the CRM reboot cycle again. This happens over and over again. And how do we get out of this cycle? How do we move into something that looks much more like this? Instead of redoing a CRM, instead of moving from HubSpot to Salesforce or wherever you're at, you can just stay on HubSpot. How do we create an iterative process that can eat and ingest new requirements and new questions in a way where we can grow faster and not have to you spend less money and there's less risk and you move faster. That's what the growth-driven design is all about. And that's what we are answering today. Okay, so let's move into how we actually, there's a lot here. I'm moving into how we actually do this. I'm going to sit on these for a second and talk about, so when we talk about the growth-driven CRM, there are 4 principles that this is built on. Principle number 1, and this is actually in the RevOps manifesto, it's principle number 1 there too, is Adoption is greater than process, which is greater than tool. So what's the significance of this? So if y'all been in a CRM implementation world, or you talk to a consultant, they're going to tell you, they're not going to start with this. They're going to say, you know what you should do? We're going to draw your process first. And then once we fix your process, we'll then determine your tool. And then we'll start implementation. And I'll make sure adoption occurs via training. That's backwards. Adoption must be the preeminent mindset, what you're thinking about at all times. And thus, ease of use and adoption is more important, affects the tool. So if the tool you're selecting is a tool that's not pretty, or it's a tool that is not intuitive and people don't like using, it affects how well your CRM is going to do. Adoption matters. It is the most important aspect of any implementation, which also means how you support and how high touch you need to be matters. So you must have issue tracking, and when people have issues, you must have a way of processing them and doing them very quickly. And so we'll talk about that later. Number 2, MVP then iterate. CRMs are not static. They while the core function will never change, right? Like you're going to be capturing sales and you need to book revenue, and then that needs to be turned into how you're recognizing it. You need to have a sales to service. As your company grows, growth begets complexity and the needs change. And so thus scope changes. And thus your CRM must be collecting input from the users and changing as their needs change. And so the ability to adapt is a fundamental and must be part of how you're doing the CRM. Number 3, and this talks about number 1, is thus, because of this, we must prioritize training and issues. So if there's an issue, let's talk this. Anytime we do something new, we're asking someone to get worse at their job. And so that requires an uncommon level of attention to get them to, an uncommon level of attention to make sure you're fixing small errors immediately. A small error, like, hey, I don't know how to create a contact. It may seem very easy to you. If you address that immediately, adoption increases and you create a lover of what you're doing. But if you don't address it immediately and it takes a week, they will figure out a way to do their job, and it won't be the way you want them to, not be in the CRM. I'm gonna answer the question after I have gone to this last one. Number 4 is RevOps as a differentiator. I just want to break this down because I think we make RevOps too complicated sometimes. The ultimate goal of RevOps or a CRM is the ability to answer questions quickly. And the questions rarely change. Thus, there are best practices, thus the profession of revenue operations professionals. There are very specific data models, and there's very specific processes for collecting, synthesizing, and disseminating data that best facilitates answers. And so there are best practices, and you want to put those in at the very, very beginning and understand that. Thus, the pivots you have to make will be smaller because your house and foundation are solid, rather than having to completely wipe out a foundation to start. Okay, I'm going to take a pause as I answer a question from Stefina. I'm going to answer this a lot. What to do when the customer asks for the CRM, maybe the very expensive plan. You train all the customer staff, but the sales staff don't use it. I'm going to answer my interpretation is, what do you do when sales staff don't use the CRM? I'm going to very specifically, if sales staff don't use the CRM, it's the CEO's fault, because it's very easy to make salespeople use the CRM. All you do is say, hey, CEO says, hey, I will be checking, or I show up to a weekly sales meeting and I will check. And if sales are not in this and I do not have an update, then your deal or what you're working on doesn't exist to me. That's all it takes. You just do that a couple of times, salespeople will use it, but it must be top-down behavior enforcement in order to collect the information. That's what's been best and most useful for me in the past. Okay. So this are the principles that the growth-driven CRM works on. I'm going to go to next. I'm going to dive this in. So I'm going to actually go adoption. And you heard me sit on this, but please forgive me as I talk about it more because it's the most important thing ever. Adoption is king. Why is adoption so important? It is important because the process doesn't exist if people aren't using the process. So our processes honestly aren't that important. The only thing that's important about our process is that it's a process that people like doing, right? That's what's important. And there's a multiplicative effect in adoption. Negative one. It actually doesn't go up. It only goes down. And this is why it has to be monitored so closely. A drop in adoption, a drop has an outsized impact, and increases. It actually doesn't matter. You're either fully adopted or you're not fully adopted. But if adoption decreases, it wipes out all the positive. Let me give you an example. Bad data. If there's a 5% decrease in user adoption, and it has a significant impact on the reporting, because you're using a CRM to do what? Answer questions. And if the data is bad, then you can't do what? Answer questions correctly. So if adoption decreases, then the report that used to be useful is no longer useful, and I must answer it a different way. Thus, adoption must be 90 to 100%, or it doesn't matter at all. And that's why it must be the number one thing we're thinking about and doing and building all your processes around. Implication of this: adoption over function. So I literally mean sacrifice the capabilities of your CRM if they do not increase adoption. So part of this is create the minimum viable product, then iterate. So it's be ruthless when doing the initial implementation to say, hey, that seems like it's a very specific niche need. Is there a better, can you continue using your current process? And is this a must-have today inside the CRM, or you won't use it? And just be ruthless in that and sacrifice function for adoption. Number two, true north. I'm going to just say it with an example, is adoption is the most important thing. Nobody questions the ROI of email. You know why? Because 100% adopted. When we talk about, is the CRM going to work? Is it going to transform my business? Yes. Anything when adopted will transform what you're doing. If I get up at 5 a.m. every morning and work out, it will transform me. If I use a CRM and input my data and track my sales, that I have more insight in what's happening, tracking all customer interactions. Yes, it will transform in ways you can't even see your CRM. Yes. Ongoing. This is a big one. And this is when we heard say Rev Partners does RevOps as a service, is implementations never stop. And that's a reality. Sometimes we don't like hearing it, but you have a CRM. It's a living organism. And every time we're not feeding it, it's dying. People are stopping using it. Adoption's decreasing because there's as we said, Excels are coming. So implementation, get rid of the word implementation, just call it product releases, right? The support of internally, it never stops. So the question becomes, how are we supporting that? And how are we building the ability to quickly fix or intake and fix what's happening? And so adoption, to be done well, must be thought about continuously and at all points by someone inside the organization. Yeah. I talked about adoption too much. Hopefully it's coming in really hard, because that's the intent. Keep it real simple, especially when we first start, is everything you must be done. Everything you must do must be done with adoption as the goal. Simpler is adoption is the goal, and it's the only thing that matters. And everything must be seen within that lens. Okay, so we are 30 minutes in, and now we're getting into the juicy. How do you do this? And I'm trying to keep this real simple, because the growth-driven CRM process, I want it to be adopted. So let's keep it simple. So I'm going to go through step one. We're going to go through each one of these steps individually. Feel free to ask questions as we go through to do this. So step number one, this is a step that I don't feel like many of us do. I know I didn't do it when I was doing my first couple of CRMs, build outs when I did them in Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics, and it created disasters, is define the data model. And that is your go-to-market, how it's going, and and I'll explain. You'll see, I'm going to show you very visually why that matters. And if that's set up right, and the rest of this stuff, you can build if you have the foundation of your house set up right, all this other stuff, it's really easy to iterate on. Number 2, define the MVP requirements and features. Number 3, prioritize them in the order they need to be done. And number 4, start the sprints. And so I use the word sprints. This is very clearly, we're going to use agile. Actually, I use 1-week sprints. And then there is a process to do issue tracking throughout, along with how we're documenting all of this. And so I'm going to go through each one of these steps, and we'll have processes. And after this, they'll have some some guides on how to do these things. So let's go through step number 1. Define your data model. Why is this important? Your go-to-market motion is your data model. And it is fundamentally RevOps, and you've heard me say this, broken down really simple. Everybody's doing revenue operations. Nobody just, this whole thing is, should I start? Everybody is. It's just how well you're doing it. And answering these questions is, how well are you collecting? How well are you synthesizing? And then how well are you disseminating revenue data? And so when I talk about collection, I mean, you have to define, like, what are the volume, conversion, and tie points you're collecting. Synthesizing based on that, like, what are the customer life cycles that you're using for those conversions? How are you doing lead scoring? How are you doing forecasting? There's all these processes that then sit on what you're collecting. And then disseminating, like, what questions have to be answered based on the go-to-market. If you're doing based on your types, what you're seeing, like, there are different types of data models. Each one of these different types of data models impacts what you collect, what you synthesize, and what you disseminate. For example, if I do which our examples here, because our specialty is like B2B SaaS companies, is if we're doing B2B recurring revenue, one of the questions I'm asking is, what's my, well, we're always going to ask, regardless of these, what's my CAC, my customer acquisition cost, but what's my lifetime customer value, and how I calculate that, and the conversions change based on your go-to-market, and what significant changes based on your go-to-market, and how you affect each one of those conversions changes based on your go-to-market and your data models. And so understanding that and building your CRM around those processes is extremely helpful. The 3 types, I just put them here. B2B. Inside B2B, there's one-time, so like a consulting company that's doing lots of one-time fees or training. You have B2B SaaS companies that have billed mostly recurring. B2B2C is this pass-through. So there can be a pass-through where you sell to a B2B company who then sells to a consumer. You have the marketplace, these double-sided marketplaces that you have to both think of like an Uber Eats, right? You have to get the businesses, and then you have to get the consumers to come, and they're like triple-sided where they have to then get the workers and delivery. And the significance of all this is, like, what you're trying to do is you're answering these 3 types of questions, and how good you are at RevOps depends on which types of questions you can answer. And I break them into 3 categories: hindsight, insight, and foresight. Hindsight being what happened, insight being what's happening, foresight being what will happen. And based on how well you're defining these depends on what you can answer. Okay, I am going to answer a question, and we'll come back. So this question is, answering this live, is there a great way to log changes in your portal? We currently just document them in a spreadsheet. I do the same. So is there a great way? There are lots of different ways. And there is the best practice, in my opinion, is having a consolidated location where you're tracking all changes. Now, depending on what ecosystem you're in, if you're in a Salesforce ecosystem, there's a software called Sonar that's really good for this, where you can track any system updates. In HubSpot, they have system logs, but they're based on individual fields. And so if you're making a big change, what we do is we use ClickUp as our project management, and we track all changes to the system in ClickUp. So spreadsheet works just as well, as long as it's integrated into whatever process you're doing for changing. Next question is, would you say part of defining the data model is assessing the need of custom objects in the entity relational diagram as well, or is it outside the regular scope of the MBV product? So first, to define some of these things, your ERD, your entity relational diagram, is your CRM is nothing more than a relational diagram with a contact database, table, company table, et cetera. almost always the MVP does not require a custom object, meaning something that is not company, ticket, deal, contact, product. Almost always that's not MVP. It's usually a feature release, and it is like, hey, I now want to start tracking inventory inside this, and I then want to start tracking invoices and what's and whether or not they've been paid based on the deal. Those type of requirements that tend to be feature releases, not MVP core functionality of what must happen, in my opinion, and what I've seen. Now, that's not always true, and that changes as you go up. So that, like, enterprise organizations, their MVP will usually be more robust and always require some custom integration. However, your mid-markets to SMBs traditionally will not. And so while there's this loosely, 80% of the time, no. Answer. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any more questions, please put them on there. Okay. I'm now switching, and I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by your data model matters. Now, this is beautiful. If you haven't looked at any winning by design, specifically if you're doing B2B recurring SaaS, they are amazing. But this is an example, and you can do this for any type of business. So there's 3 things you're looking at when you're creating a data model. Again, we haven't gotten to the CRM implementation yet, right? We're still like, we need to know what we're going to collect and the model we're going to use. That is, there are volume metrics, meaning like there's a number of leads, opportunities, et cetera. You have conversion metrics that sit in between each one of the stages. And you have time metrics that say, here's how long something sat inside the stage when it converted. Conversions, when it converted from one to the next. And volumes is how many occurred. And so when you're thinking about RevOps and CRM, ultimately, any of the processes we're doing, or anything like, let's create an email campaign, let's do lead score, every process is fundamentally attempting to change one of these metrics. And so as you think about ROI or RevOps, and you're thinking about these, is make sure when you're thinking about a feature release, when you think about MVP, my MVPs usually we're setting up collection and execution and gathering of this information. Is it super blurry for you? Someone says, is it blurry? It is not blurry for me, but I'm going to send these out afterwards so you'll have them. So you have each one of these. So when you're building out your initial CRM, when you're building out your CRM, it is so important you define these. Okay, it looks like it's blurred for a few people. It is so important you can define these. And if you can, then you can execute well. Let me give you an example. So this is like once you have collected, because there's actually inside this selection period in your volume metric 4 to CRM, you can actually start defining that more. It's a very common RevOps purpose. You see this. It's the hindsight insight portion. So it's taking each one of your sales stages you've now put into the system, and you're looking at your average conversion ratios, the number of opportunities, and you're going back and forth. And so what you can identify is where are there opportunities to improve? Are there cliffs? Are there specific ways that I can make this better? And so if your go-to-market is complete and you have your and everything's like you have people following processes, man, it opens up the world and the type of questions you can answer and report. That's why it's so important. So this is, in my opinion, like a feature release, because you have to, in order to execute this, you have to timestamp everything specifically and create behaviors. My point is, it's possible, but only because the data structure was created at the beginning. Okay. So when I think about step 1, you're breaking it down, being very, very specific. You select your data model, and you have identified every volume, every conversion, and every time metric that you're going to collect. Once you've done that, now we're moving into the defining of the process. And so many times defining of this data model requires go-to-market sessions, like understanding how they're going. It can be intense to get there, but once you have, you can, this is what you get. And that's the clarity you're creating for people, whether internally inside your customer or you're delivering CRMs for other people. Let's go to step 2. Okay, so MVP, the how-to. I'm going to give you very specific ways that I'm doing this. So step one, I always start with drawing. I do not draw current processes. I only draw future processes. So that's number one. I use Miro is what I'm using. That's what I'm using here. But you can also, I've used Lucidchart in the past, and there's Miro. So the way I do this is, or the way I recommend doing this is you're drawing your sales process, or your marketing process from left to right in linear journeys. When you have a process that you've identified that you're creating future processes that does not exist today, you color code it red, and you can use yellow, green, but color code what doesn't exist, what needs to be done. Number two, have an opinion. Is when you see something wrong with the current process, proactively make recommendations so you can draw it. i.e., if you see something that's not going to create the data model you've already selected, right, then you tell them that doesn't work and that's something we need to fix. And so my MVP is creating the data model, but I'm helping people get there by drawing. Number three, linear. Draw linear. So go from left to right and never go down. And if there is a side, go from left to right, then come back and then finish that, but don't go up and down. And this is this may be contrary, but to advice you've heard consulting, I feel strongly about this as well. Do not ask open-ended questions. Ask yes/no questions. So example is when a sales qualified lead comes in, do you have a process for routing it? Yes or no? Yeah, we have. And yes, we have one. Okay, what is it? Then it's yes, no, then follow up with an open-ended question. And that will make the drawing and the requirement session process much more cooperative and easier to get through and much more effective. Step two. So once I've drawn this out from left to right all the way through, I then go through a failure if statements. So we now have drawn out, and I've seen some red. There might be a lot of red. It might be saying, hey, we essentially don't have anything at all that we want, and everything's red. Okay. Well, now let's go through this, and let's say the CRM is a failure if, and then capture every statement that comes afterwards. And here's an example. The CRM fails if the sales team cannot make updates via email. And so it's just important you're capturing these. And many times you might have to ask second questions because you're like, oh, well, I really just need one source of truth. I'm like, okay, what does one source of truth mean to you? And you keep going down until you can make these failure if questions and you can answer them yes and no. And so that is what's going to create, and the reason it's important because this is going to create your epics or your objectives when we go to when we start doing prioritization. So you're taking these and you're defining them into buckets. The number three, reduce. You're going to categorize each one of the drawing, each one of the red buckets, each one of the statements into a must-have, nice-to-have, or in the future. And this, everything in must-have, based on your drawing, that is what your MVPs will be. Step four, consolidate into a must-have document, into a here's all the objectives. And so when I say consolidate, very specifically, when I say they can't be vague statements, they must be like requirements are, I can do this thing, and it must be like very specific. And thus you can create a project plan where you can create dates and how to implement and feature releases. Step five is you create your actual feature release. So now that you have your MVP statements, you have those put into features, everything that did not make the MVP list, you're putting under the nice to haves, and you are categorizing them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You haven't prioritized them yet. You're just categorizing them. And we can visually see here's the next feature that can be done once the MVP is complete. Let me give you, I think there's a visual example is always helpful for these. And I also think this is important is, man, we know what people want. So sometimes just help lead them there. So like contact management, like track interactions, you can help people make these questions. So the only way we can do MVPs well is if we know the CRM well enough, or like what people want well enough that you can help them answer these. So just know, like, there are these best practices and there's requirements that happen every single time over and over again. So just help people and you can help lead them to the right places. That's my point. Next, we're gonna visualize what this looks like in a second. You'll see there on the right is this. Step 2. We now have the MVP list and the feature list. We know what we're going to. So we go to step 3, and it's prioritization. And prioritization looks like this. Is on the left, you're gonna have, when you think about, they have the revenue strategy, they have their go-to-market, they have their data model that we're building to. And I'm breaking down each one of the MVPs into epics. And those epics are just agile words for projects. And we're structuring from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are not waterfall. You may work on epic 1, 2, and 3 all at the same week. And I'll show you, because you're putting them into a sprint. I'll show you how that works in a second. But we're constantly reprioritizing them because we're meeting weekly and we're putting epics. And if you remember, your feature release is actually at the bottom here, and they are prioritized after the MVP. Here's an example of what this looks like. So this is like a real live, this is a project that I've done for a HubSpot instance. And you'll notice each one of these, I've broken these down into feature releases. And you'll notice each one of these boxes is an epic that I have in a system. It's called sales technical, user setup, basic HubSpot training, data and revenue mapping. Each one of these has broken into very specific capabilities on what is happening when it's complete for each one of these stages based on the feature, based on the must-have and boxes that we said. Here's a failure if I can't do this. It's a failure if I can't see inactive, if I don't know when my deals are active in the last 14 days. It's a failure if I can't do close loss reasons or reports on why something failed. It's a failure if I can't add my qualification questions and have gated between the two, right? That's how those were created. We put these in. We then can very easily, because it's module, because they're features, you can now shift your project plans from back and forth. So this is where we start before we put it into our PM or our project management system. So this is a visual representation of an MVP. So the features are not here because the features will happen after week 12. Next thing you'll notice is MVPs are usually 90 days, not 6 months. Okay. So that gets us there. We now have, when you finish step 3, have an MVP timeline and your features are in the PM tool. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you what that looks like live inside one of our, I have it here. Yeah, it's going to be at the side. I'm going to show you what this looks like in a second, and then I'll show you live inside one of our tools, just so we can see it for clarity. So next, start sprints. This is really simple. I didn't put a lot of time. I didn't put a lot of sharing this because this is simple. This is like you get your project management, your epics are built out. And the difference is you're bringing from your epics, you're now selecting tasks inside an epic and you're pushing it into a sprint. So you're moving away from a waterfall. Now you have module feature releases that you're pulling from each week to say, I commit to finishing this said task this week. And now you're meeting weekly and you're reprioritizing the feature releases and the task you're doing, rather than a waterfall thing that's just been all the way through. And so why this matters is if an issue comes up or a training comes up, you're able to track it. And we'll talk about that at the very end. So here's an example. This is a company we have. Here's MDB. MDB, you'll notice on the left has every single one of these is a feature release that we've identified. Each one of these feature releases, you'll show we've had 70 different issues. There's 39 different tasks and projects inside of visit tracking. When we think of each one of these different feature releases, we're pulling tasks in each week. So here's an example. Hey, MDB, PandaDocs fix, issue tracker, need to be complete. A subtask, fix mismatched numbers inside visit tracking. You notice we had 2 core list or epics these were coming from on the side. And that's how we're constantly going. We're meeting each week to track, hey, is this being complete? And moving back and forth. And you're meeting with users. And when they give you a new issue, you track it inside the issue tracker. Okay. So once we have that, the last thing is your issue tracker itself. And I'm going to show here the mechanics for this. This is really simple. I just more theoretical. Is first you need to create your collection mechanisms, which is, for me, it is almost always email, Slack, PM tool. I prefer email, and then I can just put it straight into the issue tracker itself. And then step 3 is you're adding to sprints. So as soon as somebody sends you something, they should be an issue or a new training task should be prioritized, especially if it's a recently deployed feature that something's not working, so that you can affect adoption. Okay, so this was overall is to go through. This is a methodology on how to move from waterfall into a growth-driven CRM process that can help prevent many of the most common issues with a waterfall project-based implementation, and that can help you prioritize adoption. And that is it. And so I am open to questions. So if y'all have any questions, this is question and answer time for the next 8 minutes. So I'm going to move to a much cooler screen and let us start doing questions. We are on air for questions.
All right. Thank you, Matt. That was an amazing presentation. And yeah, I think a lot of people here enjoyed it looking at the chat. Someone asks whether we can, whether the recording will be sent out. Yes. I'm working with Matt's team to get the slides, and the presentation is of course also being recorded as we speak, and I'll send you all an email tomorrow with all of that in there. I think there was also like a question, but I think it's already been answered around which PM tool you're using to track activities, and it seems to be ClickUp. But if you want to expand on that, Matt, feel free.
Correct. What we use is ClickUp, and I'm going to go through this evolution. We actually started on Coda.io. It's a Notion-like tool that allows you to do lots of like create your own project management tool. And we moved to ClickUp because it has that sprint capability, right? Where you can have a folder. Inside that folder, you can then have your epics, and then you can have independent sprints that exist outside of that you can then add your tasks to. And so that it has agile methodology. Another one's good. You could use Asana. I just don't like Asana as much. I haven't used it in the past.
All right, amazing. I'm not really seeing any actual. I'm scrolling through the chat to see if there's anything that we may have missed. So if there are any questions, you can ask them now. But you've already answered a couple of these questions during the presentations. So if people want to, rewatch this, go through the slides, and if they have any questions for you past today, how do they best reach out to you, Matt?
The best way to reach out to me would be on LinkedIn. So you go to Matthew Bolian on LinkedIn. And then if you DM me or I'm there. Also, I'm halfway active in the HubSpot super admin community. So if you're on Discord and there, you can send the question, and at Big Bad Red as my gamer name, for better or worse. And I'm there, and I will answer the question as well.
All right, I see a couple of more questions coming in. We'll get through those now. In the Q&A, I'm seeing at the top, do you have any specific tips for CRM implementation for CS teams?
Yes, and you'll see that if that data model it's going to be the same exact way. And I'll break this down. So number one, understand your data model. So what happens, especially working with service teams, is it's really hard for a service team to stop what they're doing and start and like move to a CRM, because it's always has to be answered immediately. You're dealing with a customer, thus actions are prioritized. But you are still, that's actually, you'll hear lots of, this is the most important part of the business, especially during recessions, is expanding and serving current customers. And so my recommendation when doing implementations is you almost always have to have an outside partner, because you're never going to be able to have the focus to be able to do it, number one. Number two is when having service is understand where people are asking questions, and then how is that question getting into your CRM, and then how are you answering it. So it depends on your go-to-market motion, right? If it's your e-commerce brand, and they're asking questions on Facebook that you need to shoot in, or they're asking directly on your website, so you need the tickets to come in and create and then get assigned. But it's always the same. It is where are questions coming from, How am I ingesting that, getting routed to the right person? And then how am I tracking how quickly those said issues are getting resolved? And as long as you're answering those, again, conversion, if you're answering those three things, then you can execute that inside the CRM. Hopefully that's helpful as tips.
All right. One other question is, what is the key to getting user buy-in?
The key to getting user buy-in is threefold. Point number one, and hopefully you saw this in here, is answer every question and every issue they have immediately and capture it and show them you've heard them, that you see them, and that you're fixing the problems that they have. And so that'll look like an issue tracker, they'll look like a Slack message, or it looks like a one-on-one very quick meeting to help train. Those small micro interactions have gargantuan effects on adoption. That's number one. So that's like the bottom up approach. Number two, top down. How do you get user buy-in? You make sure their bosses tell them they have to do it. Specifically, meaning they're running their organization from a report that answers specific questions. So if we've set up the data model right, every question that said manager needs to answer or C-suite person will be inside the CRM. And so if you can show them that if this data is collected, they can answer these questions, they will demand their buyers come in, or the end users will use. So then you can do a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach. And number three is taking use cases and like if you have one department use it, or you have one salesperson, it's like, man, this just transformed my life. Doing a personal testimony or a case study about how this said thing has affected them and created that advocate inside will help. So bottom up, top down, and then make it relatable.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch. Having like ambassadors on teams that vouch for a use case and all of that helps a lot, like internally here as well. Okay, a couple more questions. We don't have that much time, so maybe we can do some rapid fire, go through them like that. There's a question here.
Quickly, yeah.
How many users do you suggest to test MVP? And what are the metrics you based on to measure adoption?
Users for MVP will be dependent on the size. I never go above 5 to 10 sales users. When I'm testing something, I traditionally try to keep it around 5 when I'm doing MVP, but it depends on sometimes the sales team or who you're using. So 5 to 10 is what I'm attempting to do. Number two is metrics. Again, it depends on where they're at in the maturity, but usually for sales, for example, it would be, are they logging their emails? Are they logging their activities? Are they capturing every deal at the point of whatever your SQL, whatever point you want to create the deal? And are they tracking it through their deal cycle? And it's yes, no questions. And that's how I'm tracking adoption for each one of those. And it's really easy to create adoption dashboards based on those metrics.
All right, one other question. Any other valuable tools you can suggest or recommend?
Tool lover. So this is totally off topic. Valuable tool I love is, crisp.io. My child is yelling in the background and you have no clue because I have crisp.ai. Get it? It's awesome. What I'm using is called as a presentation. It's really cool and you can do cool things. I recommend using that. For CRM, I am a big have bleed orange now. Used to be a Salesforce fanatic, now a HubSpot fanboy of HubSpot. And so I believe HubSpot is the best data model. It makes hopefully this is easy. It makes adoption easier and it makes your data model easier to do. And hopefully you'll see from how we think about this, or I think about this, that's why I very clearly ended up on HubSpot. I'll stop there because it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
11 a.m.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Thanks everyone for being here and sticking with us. This was a hugely, I think, impactful and insightful presentation. So thanks so much for being here. And we'll send the recording and the presentation, the slides, all of that over to tomorrow in an email. But yeah, thanks so much again for being here and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Adios.